Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thank you so much for tuning in here. Wednesday, June 18th, second show of the day for y'all. Right now, we're taking a look at future needs for the Jacksonville Jaguars, potential needs in the future. I think when you look at this roster, they've done a good job, both the previous regime and the current regime, of kind of setting things up to have long-term pieces in place. Honestly, I look throughout the roster and there's not a lot of future needs, but we're looking at these future needs where they could pop up, where they certainly have future needs based on the current roster and the contracts on the current roster, all that good stuff. So we're going to dive into it here today. Really appreciate y'all tuning in, supporting the channel. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Are the future needs of the Jacksonville Jaguars before we get it going here? And then also and if you haven't, please subscribe. Helps the channel out a ton. So I think there's two really, really obvious needs for the Jaguars beyond the 2025 season. One of them is wide receiver 3. Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, they're locked in as your top 2 wide receivers for the next 5 years. Really. I mean, the earliest I think that it's possible, if BTJ continues on the current path that he's on, that he's not in Jacksonville, would be 2030. But if he continues on the path he's on, he's going to stay in Jacksonville. Like, this regime's going to get that new contract done sooner rather than later. I mean, they can do it following the 2026 season, but it wouldn't actually start hitting the books until like 2029, I believe. So BTJ and Travis Hunter are locked in. You've got your top 2. But beyond that, Dyami Brown is on a 1-year deal. We talked about him a lot earlier today. I think it's a big year for him. I think if he plays well, he could either stick around in Jacksonville for a while because they'll have plenty of money to allocate to the wide receiver position over the next several years because their top 2 guys are on rookie deals, or he could find himself a new home and get paid to be a starter elsewhere. But either way, right now, as things stand for the roster beyond the 2025 season, you'd be looking at Parker Washington as your wide receiver 3 for 2026. And nothing against Parker Washington at all, but I don't think he's done enough to prove to this point that he's definitely a wide receiver 3 or a high quality wide receiver 3 in this league. Could he become that? Could he show that? Yes. I have a lot of confidence in Parker Washington's game overall, but he also just doesn't possess like a ton of game-breaking speed. He's more about quickness, agility, route running. He has some power in his lower half and a good young player, but somebody who I think has yet to prove he can be a wide receiver 3 or that he is a wide receiver 3 in the NFL. And so the thing about Parker Washington too is even if you roll with Parker going into 2026, he doesn't have a long-term future in terms of the contract situation, right? 2026 is the final year of his rookie deal. So you just don't have a lot to really bank on beyond 2025 right now for the Jaguars. And look, I like Parker. I like Dyami. I'd be cool if the Jags say, hey, we're going to bring them both back. Parker Washington on a much lesser deal, but we give Dyami one of these, 3-year deals, team out after 2 years. We pay him to be a starting receiver, even though he's our wide receiver 3. And we roll because we feel really good about it. You could also say, hey, we can go get a wide receiver 3 on day 2 of the draft next year. There's a lot of different ways they could play it out, but based on the way the roster is constructed right now, they do not have a future at wide receiver 3 unless you're really counting on Parker Washington. Bottom line. So that's a big need. I think edge 3 beyond 2025 is a big need. And you'll notice like these top 2 needs, they're like pseudo starters. Like edge 3 is a very big role. Wide receiver 3 is a very big role. but it's not like you have these needs at the top of the roster at these spots. You have your top two at both of these spots, but edge three is important. And right now, Emanuel Agba is edge three. You also have DeJuan Smoot. You drafted Jalen McLeod. You've got Miles Cole competing. To me, none of the young guys are clearly that guy yet. Maybe they can prove that, sure. And am I against like Emanuel Agba returning or Emanuel Agba and DeJuan Smoot both returning? No, but Agba's under contract for 2025. Smoot's under contract for 2025. So they don't have a long-term plan at edge three, and that's not necessarily one of those positions where you need to have a long-term plan in place. Would it be nice to get a young guy to develop with your top two, your core? Sure. But that's one of those areas of your roster where you can find answers year to year, whether it be in the draft or free agency. I feel very confident in saying that. You just have to be able to go out and find the right fits for your football team. And Emanuel Agba, I don't think he's shown signs of slowing down to the point where he won't be able to play in the NFL in 2026. But again, based on the current contracts on the roster, it's absolutely a need. And so I think wide receiver three and edge three are the clearest needs. I think the other three needs that we're going to talk about here today on the top five future needs are more of me kind of projecting guys that are replacement level starters that are currently starting for the Jaguars, or guys that may be a little bit older that are currently starters for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so I think the center position, they signed Robert Hainsey, who's not an old player. Robert Hainsey's still, pretty much entering his prime right now. He's not an old dude, but he is someone who was replaced in Tampa. The Jaguars signed him this year, 27 years old, to a 3-year contract. They can reasonably get out of that contract following the 2026 season, but it is possible the way the contract is structured that the Jaguars could move on following the 2025 season should they so choose. Obviously, Luke Fortner still in the building as well, but I think you look at this group and Robert Hainsey could probably be a sufficient starter for you over the next couple years. So it's not necessarily that he can't start for you. But to me, I've said this a lot. I think you look at the interior of the offensive line for the Jaguars. Yes, Wyatt Milam is in the pipeline now, and I think that's something to be encouraged about. You have Patrick McCary, you have Robert Hainsey, you have Ezra Cleveland. I think Milam's going to end up being starting left guard at some point. I think Patrick McCary is probably locked in a little bit heavier as the starting right guard. And, he can obviously move around in case of injuries, but I think he's locked in as a starting right guard. He's getting paid a lot more than Robert Hainsey, right? Hainsey signed a $7 million per year deal. McCary signed $13 million per year. So they really valued McCary quite a bit. I think on that interior, you could really use an upgrade. You've got, in my opinion right now, sufficient level starters or guys that can get the job done in this system, but probably having at least one guy that you feel like is a really good starter, or even somebody who could be a potential Pro Bowl type player on the interior, would really help things out quite a bit, honestly. And I think that he could raise the ceiling of that group if you bring in somebody young, whatever it may be. So yeah, I think that could be a need long term, or in the next couple years at center. I think safety is a very similar situation. You obviously have two starting safeties. Eric Murray is going to be one of them, and he was signed to a similar deal to Robert Hainsey, 3 years, about $7 million per year. You could get out following the 2025 season, but it's going to make more sense financially, salary cap wise, to do it following the 2026 season. And somebody who, again, has started in this league, has played a lot in this league, is a veteran. He's 31, so he's actually a little different situation than Hainsey because he's more up there in age and in years, but somebody who I think you could be looking to replace in the starting lineup. I think the Jaguars probably feel confident that Caleb Bransall will be a starter for them. But beyond 2025, I think you could be looking to upgrade from Eric Murray at safety. And then finally, interior of the defensive line. You've got Eric Armstead, who really, I think, if he's able to stay relatively healthy, he's going to play so much better in this defense than he did last year, being played out of position in a really bad defense. I think he's going to do a much better job, and I think he'll be the type of guy where you can just let him ride out the rest of his career, really, in Jacksonville. I don't think that he has kind of hit the wall. I do not think that at all. I think he can still play for several more years. So I think that he could, if he sticks around and you have Mason Smith developing, then this kind of doesn't really look like as big of a need. But it's also possible that the Jaguars get out of his contract in a year or two, and they also can get out of Devon Hamilton's in a year or two, and then you're really starting to need to replenish the juice on the interior. So I think that that's a possibility. I think that just Eric Armstead, though, when you're comparing like these different positions where you do have that veteran in place over the next couple of years, Eric Armstead is a much, much better player on the interior of the defensive line than Eric Murray is at safety or Robert Hainsey is at center. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I would like to see him stick around, honestly, long term, or at least next 2-3 years for your Jaguars. As the folks is going in and out. Gotta love that from the camera here. So that's where I'm at. Would love to know what y'all think about the Jaguars' future needs and what might be a priority for them following the 2025 season. I think clearly wide receiver 3, figuring that out because you don't really have a wide receiver 3 on the roster unless you're banking on Parker Washington beyond 2025. I would love to see De'Ami Brown play well and them get him extended during the season as a starting wide receiver or getting paid as a starting wide receiver. And then also at edge 3, you don't have much beyond 2025. So really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like. If you have not subscribed yet, please do that as well. And y'all have a good one.